People always ask why I took the job. I usually tell them the truth. Nobody else wanted it. The crematorium stood at the edge of town, beyond the old industrial district, where abandoned warehouses rotted beside rusted train tracks. The building itself looked less like a funeral facility and more like a forgotten factory. Gray concrete walls, tiny windows, a single smokestack rising into the sky like a black finger pointing toward heaven, or warning something below. When I first arrived there, 6 months ago, I remember thinking the place looked dead even before anyone was brought inside. Maybe that should have been my first warning. My name is Emily Carter. I was 27, drowning in debt, working 2 part-time jobs that barely paid rent. When the advertisement appeared online, offering almost double the normal salary for overnight crematorium operations, I applied without hesitation. No experience required. Night shifts preferred. Immediate hiring. I got the position within 24 hours. That should have been my second warning. The manager interviewed me for less than 10 minutes. His name was Richard Graves, a thin man in his 60s with silver hair and pale eyes that never seemed to blink. He barely asked about my qualifications. Instead, he asked strange questions. Do you live alone? Any history of sleepwalking? No. Night terrors? No. Religious? I shrugged. Not really. He seemed relieved. Then he slid a contract across the desk. You're hired. That was it. No background check, no references, nothing. Just a signature. And suddenly I belonged to the dead. The first few months were surprisingly normal, at least as normal as a crematorium can be. Most people imagine the work is horrifying. It's not. You stop seeing bodies after a while. You stop thinking about who they were. You focus on procedures, identification, documentation, preparation, operation. Everything becomes mechanical, clinical, safe. The furnace becomes a machine. The body becomes a task. That's how your mind protects itself. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. Most nights I worked alone. A delivery van would arrive, carrying the deceased. Place the body into the cremation chamber. Record times and temperatures. Then wait. Hours passed slowly in the silence. Sometimes I listened to podcasts. Sometimes music. Sometimes I just sat in the control room, drinking coffee and watching security cameras. Nothing unusual ever happened. Until October. That's when the noises started. The first sound came from Furnace 3 at exactly 2:17 a.m. I remember because I checked the clock immediately afterward. The body had been inside for nearly an hour. The cremation process was well underway. No movement should have been possible. No sound should have been possible. Yet something knocked from inside. 3 sharp impacts. Bang, bang, bang. I nearly spilled my coffee. My heart jumped into my throat. I stared at the monitor. Nothing. The furnace door remained sealed. Temperatures normal. Pressure normal. Everything normal. I convinced myself it had been metal expanding from heat. Old buildings make noises. Old machines make noises. I laughed at myself, finished my coffee, and forgot about it. For 3 days. Then it happened again. This time the sound came from Furnace 2. A different body, a different night. The exact same time. 2:17 a.m.
Bang. The noise echoed through the facility. Louder this time. Louder, deliberate. Almost rhythmic. Like someone trapped inside wanted attention. I felt goosebumps spread across my arms. I checked every camera, every hallway, every room. Nothing. The building was empty. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing just beyond my field of vision, watching, waiting, listening. When my shift ended, I reported the incident to Richard. He didn't seem surprised. Not even slightly. He simply stared at me for several seconds, then smiled. Then wasn't a comforting smile. It was the smile of someone hearing something they already knew. Old equipment, he said. That's all. But old equipment. The conversation ended there. Looking back now, I realized something. He never asked what the sound was. He already knew. Halloween arrived with freezing rain. The weather report warned people to stay indoors. Wind screamed through the streets. Trees bent like twisted skeletons. By midnight, the entire town felt abandoned. Even the dead seemed quieter. That night, only one cremation was scheduled. A woman named Margaret Holloway, 74 years old. Heart failure. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. Just another file. Another body. Another shift. Long Pong Schnupfs. At 1:50 a.m., I placed her into Furnace 3. At 2:10 a.m., the lights flickered. I frowned. The backup generators activated immediately. Everything returned to normal. Then every monitor in the control room went black. Not off. Black. As if something stood directly in front of every camera. I stared, confused. Then the screens returned. Static covered every display. White noise crackled from the speakers. A horrible electronic hiss. Then the image cleared. For a split second, I saw a face. A woman's face, burned. Blackened. Smiling. Then it vanished. I nearly fell from my chair. The room suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. I checked the recordings. Nothing. No face. No interruption. No evidence. Just static. I spent the next several minutes trying to calm myself. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe stress. Maybe imagination. Then 2:17 arrived. And everything changed. Bang. The first knock shook the wall. Bang. The second made the control room windows vibrate. Bang. The third sounded so powerful, I thought the furnace door might burst open. I jumped to my feet. For a moment, silence returned. Then another sound emerged. Then a sound I had never heard before. Scratching. Slow. Deliberate. Metal against metal. Something scraping from inside the furnace. My blood turned to ice. The scratching continued. Then stopped. Then a voice whispered through the speakers. Barely audible. Almost lost beneath static. One sentence. 3 words. Let me out. I froze. Every muscle locked. Every breath stopped. The voice belonged to a woman. Weak. Desperate. Terrified. Let me out. The words repeated. Again. 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 I ran.
I don't remember leaving the control room. I only remember standing in the hallway seconds later, heart hammering, breathing hard. The furnace room stretched ahead of me, dark, silent, empty. The whispering had stopped. The scratching had stopped. Everything had stopped. Only the storm remained. Thunder growled outside. Rain hammered the roof. I told myself to leave, to get in my car, to call someone, anyone. Instead, I walked toward Furnace 3, because human curiosity is stronger than fear. At least until it's too late. The chamber door glowed red from heat. Nothing unusual, nothing visible. I stepped closer, then closer. Then I noticed something impossible. The viewing window, the thick, heat-resistant glass. Someone had written on it from the inside. 3 words, black letters, burned into the glass. "Help me, Emily." I stumbled backward. My legs nearly collapsed. No one should know my name. The dead certainly shouldn't. Yet there it was, written clearly, perfectly. "Help me, Emily." A crack suddenly appeared in the center of the glass. Then another. Then another. Spiderweb fractures spread across the surface. The furnace temperature alarm exploded into life. Red lights flashed. Sirens screamed. The entire building shook. And somewhere deep inside the crematorium, something laughed. Not a human laugh. Not even close. A sound ancient and wrong. A sound that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. The lights died. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that darkness, I heard footsteps approaching me, slowly, from inside the furnace room.
The footsteps stopped 3 feet away from me. I couldn't see anything. The power was completely gone. No emergency lights. No backup generators. Nothing. The crematorium had become a tomb. A black, suffocating void filled with the smell of hot metal and burnt air. I stood frozen. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I couldn't move. Something was standing in the darkness. Something I knew it. I could feel it. You know that sensation when someone is staring at you? Multiply it by 1,000. The air itself seemed aware of me. Watching. Waiting. Breathing. Then I heard a woman crying. Softly. Somewhere ahead. A quiet, broken sob. The sound pierced straight through me. Because it wasn't coming from inside the furnace anymore. It was standing in the room with me. I took one shaky step backward. The crying stopped immediately. Silence. Absolute silence. Then a voice whispered beside my ear. So close, I felt cold breath touch my skin. "Emily," I screamed. My flashlight flew from my hand and clattered across the floor. The beam spun wildly. For a split second, it illuminated the room. And I saw her, standing directly beside Furnace 3, the burned woman from the monitor. Her skin looked charred black. Pieces of flesh hung from her arms. Her eyes were white, not blind, white, like glowing porcelain, and she was smiling. The light rotated away. Darkness returned. When I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it back, she was gone. I ran. Not walked. Not hurried. Ran. I sprinted through the hallway toward the main exit. My shoes slammed against concrete. My lungs burned. Every second I expected something cold to grab my shoulder, or my ankle, or my throat. The front doors appeared ahead. I nearly cried from relief. Then they slammed shut, by themselves. The sound echoed through the building like a gunshot. Boom. I crashed into them. Locked. I yanked the handles repeatedly. Nothing. The doors wouldn't move. Panic exploded inside me. I pulled out my phone. No signal. No internet. No service. Nothing. Just a blank screen. Then the flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. And revealed someone standing at the far end of the corridor, watching me. A woman. Burned. Motionless. The same woman. The flashlight died. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes. Maybe seconds. Fear destroys your sense of time. Eventually, the emergency generators restarted. The lights returned. The lights returned. Everything appeared normal again. The hallway was empty. The doors unlocked. The alarms stopped. The cameras resumed operation. It was as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Because when I checked Furnace 3, Margaret Holloway's body was gone. I searched the entire building. Storage rooms. Preparation rooms. Offices. Offices. Loading bays. Bathrooms. Nothing. Nothing. The body had vanished. A dead woman somehow disappeared from a sealed cremation chamber. I checked the records, the furnace logs, the temperature reports. Everything indicated a normal cremation. According to the system, Margaret Holloway had already been reduced to ashes. Yet when I opened the collection tray, it was empty. No ashes. No remains. Nothing. Just black metal. I called Richard immediately. He answered on the first ring, almost as if he had been expecting my call. "What happened?" he asked calmly. The question unsettled me. Not hello, not what's wrong.
What happened? As though he already knew. I explained everything. The whispers, the power failure, the missing body, the writing on the glass, the burned woman. When I finally stopped talking, there was silence. Several long seconds. Then Richard sighed, a tired sigh. The sigh of a man hearing bad news he had hoped to avoid. "Go home, Emily." "What?" "Go home. There's a missing body. I know." "You know?" Another pause. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Did she tell you her name?" The blood drained from my face. "What?" "The woman you saw." My hand tightened around the phone. "How do you know I saw a woman?" Silence. Then the line disconnected. I didn't sleep that day. Not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Standing beside the furnace. Smiling. Watching. Waiting. By evening, I had convinced myself to quit. No job was worth this. No paycheck. No amount of money. I opened my laptop and started typing a resignation email. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. A woman's voice spoke. Weak, crackling, like a bad radio signal. "Emily." I froze. The same voice. The voice from the furnace. "Who is this?" Static. Then, "Help me." My heart hammered. "Who are you?" More static. Then a single sentence. "She's still down there." I spent the next hour staring at my phone, trying to convince myself it was a prank. Someone messing with me. A cruel joke. But something bothered me. One detail. The woman hadn't said, "I'm down here." She said, "She's still down there." Not me. Her. Meaning there was someone else. Someone trapped beneath the crematorium. Someone the dead feared. And somehow, I knew exactly where I needed to go. The storm had passed by the time I returned that evening. Fog covered the industrial district. The crematorium emerged from it like a shipwreck, silent, waiting. The parking lot was empty except for Richard's car. I hadn't expected him to be there. Inside, the building felt different, heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. Richard sat alone in his office, reading. He looked exhausted. For the first time, I noticed dark circles beneath his eyes. He closed the book when I entered, slowly, carefully, like someone hiding evidence. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded. "I know." For several moments, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, dangerous. Finally, I asked, "Who was Margaret Holloway?" Richard stared at me, then shook his head. "Wrong question." "Then what's the right question?" His eyes shifted toward the hallway, toward the furnace rooms, toward something unseen. "The right question is why she came back." Cold spread through my chest. "What do you mean, came back?" Richard leaned forward. His voice dropped. "When people die, Emily, most stay dead. Most. Not all. Most." I felt sick. "You're insane." "I wish that were true." He opened a desk drawer, removed an old photograph, and handed it to me. The image showed the crematorium sometime in the 1970s. The building looked nearly identical. Same chimney, same furnaces, same offices. But dozens of employees stood outside posing for the camera, smiling, normal. Until I noticed one woman near the center. Dark hair, thin face, white uniform, and familiar eyes. I stared. My stomach twisted. "No," Richard nodded slowly. "Yes." The woman in the photograph was Margaret Holloway, exactly the same. Not 74 years old, not elderly. Young, maybe 25, the age she would have been 50 years earlier. I looked up. "What is this?" Richard swallowed, then said, "Margaret worked here." The room suddenly felt colder. "Worked here?" "Night shift." My pulse accelerated. "No, she disappeared in 1978. A knot formed in my stomach. Disappeared how?" Richard looked toward Furnace 3. His face turned pale. And when he answered, his voice barely rose above a whisper. "She went into the basement." The basement. I had worked there 6 months. There was no basement. Or so I thought. Richard stood, walked to the office door, locked it, then returned. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us." I said nothing. He continued. "When this building was constructed, there was another level underneath." My mouth went dry. "A basement?" He nodded. "Originally used for storage." "What happened to it?" "It was sealed." "Why?" Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the same drawer, removed a second photograph, then placed it on the desk. This one was different. Far different. My stomach nearly turned inside out. The picture showed a concrete staircase descending underground. At the bottom stood a steel door, covered in symbols, covered in scratches, covered in dried blood. And written across the center in huge black letters were 3 words. "Do not open." I stared, unable to speak, unable to breathe. Richard finally looked me in the eyes. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine fear. Not concern, not worry, fear, pure fear. And then he said, "Because something is still alive down there."
For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The office suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too far away from the rest of the world. I stared at the photograph on Richard's desk. The steel door, the blood, the warning. Do not open. Every rational part of my mind rejected what I was hearing. Hidden basements, disappearing corpses, dead women returning decades later. It sounded absurd, impossible, the kind of story people tell around campfires. Yet, I had seen the writing on the furnace glass. I had heard the voice, and Margaret Holloway's body had vanished. Something was happening. Something real. Something terrible. "What's down there?" I asked. Richard rubbed his face. The movement looked exhausted, automatic, as if he had repeated it 1,000 times over the years. "I don't know. That's not good enough. It's the truth." His eyes met mine. "I've spent 22 years trying to find out." The answer chilled me more than anything else. If he didn't know what was beneath the building, then how could he know it was still alive? Richard unlocked a metal cabinet standing against the wall. Inside were dozens of old binders. Dust covered every shelf. The records looked ancient, forgotten, hidden. He pulled out 3 folders and placed them on the desk. "Look." I opened the first binder. Employee records, photographs, reports, incident forms. The earliest document was dated 1972. The latest was from only 4 years ago. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then I noticed a pattern. 1 employee, missing. Another, missing. Another, missing. My pulse quickened. I flipped faster and faster. The same word appeared repeatedly. Disappeared. 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 23 names, 23 employees. Gone. No explanations, no bodies, no arrests, nothing. People simply vanished. Every single one worked the night shift. Every single one disappeared alone. And every single one vanished inside the crematorium. I looked up. What the hell is this? Richard swallowed. "That's only employees." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, only employees?" He pushed another folder toward me. I opened it, then wished I hadn't. The second binder contained cremation records, thousands of entries, decades of names, dates, case numbers. Most appeared normal, until certain pages. Pages marked with red tabs. I opened one. The report belonged to a man named Harold Finch, age 63, officially cremated in 1984. Yet someone had stamped the file with a single note, "Remains not recovered." I turned another page. Same thing. Another. Same thing. Another. And another. And another. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling. 37 bodies. 37 deceased individuals. All officially cremated. All somehow gone. No ashes. No remains. No explanation. Just like Margaret. The realization hit me like ice water. The missing bodies stretched back decades. This wasn't new. This had been happening for years. maybe longer. Why hasn't anyone investigated? Richard laughed. The sound held no humor, only bitterness. They did. He reached into the cabinet again. This time, he removed a newspaper clipping. The paper had yellowed with age. The headline read, "Local investigation finds no evidence of foul play." Below it stood a photograph of the crematorium. I read the article quickly. Police had examined multiple complaints regarding missing remains. The investigation concluded mechanical failure and poor record keeping were responsible. Case closed. No criminal activity suspected. I lowered the paper. They covered it up. Richard nodded. People panic when the dead disappear. Why? He stared toward the furnace room. The far crivling Grump looked flashed with confidence. Why would pose a pet crunel? Confused little Fensel Flanche. The paper started to crawl. The words settled over the office like poison. Coming back. Coming remembered. Not reported. Not discovered. Coming back. I suddenly remembered the burned woman smiling in the darkness. The whisper beside my ear. The phone call. The voice begging for help. What exactly did I see last night? Richard hesitated. Then answered. A revenant. I frowned. A what? A soul that should have passed on. The explanation sounded ridiculous. Yet somehow I knew he believed every word. You're talking about ghosts? No. His voice sharpened immediately. Ghosts are echoes. He leaned forward. What comes back here is something else. The room seemed colder. What else? His answer came quietly. They remember dying. I didn't like that sentence. Something about it felt wrong. Something about it felt wrong. The kind of wrong your instincts recognize before your mind does. Richard opened the third folder. Becoming an unbelievable town. Crime scene photographs. Dozens of them. Crime scene photographs. Security camera stills. Polaroids. Every image showed the same thing. Burn marks. Footprints. Messages written in ash. Some looked old. Some looked old. Others surprisingly recent. One photograph made my blood run cold. It showed a furnace window. Words burned into the glass. Exactly like the message I'd seen. Help me. Another. Let us out. Another. Rate us below. I felt nauseous. Then I found the worst image. A security camera still dated 2008. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. A woman stood in the furnace room. A blackened skin. Burned clothing. White eyes. Smiling directly at the camera. Smiling, the exact woman I had seen. Margaret Holloway. 30 years before her death certificate claimed she died. Impossible, I heard my own voice shaking. She died this year. Richard remained silent. I stared at the photograph again. The timestamp couldn't be mistaken. 18 years ago. Yet the figure was unquestionably Margaret. You understand now? He asked. No? Good. The answer surprised me. What? He looked exhausted. What? Because nobody understands. The office lights flickered. Both of us noticed immediately. Neither spoke. The lights stabilized, then flickered again. A little longer this time. The atmosphere shifted. Richard's face changed. Fear. Real fear. The kind fear cannot be faked. He slowly checked his watch. 2:11 a.m. My stomach tightened. For the first time, I realized we were approaching the same time as the previous incidents. 2:17. The next 6 minutes felt endless. Neither of us talked much. The silence became oppressive. Every creak in the building sounded louder than normal. Every distant clang made me jump. At 2:14, the furnace alarms activated briefly, then stopped. At 2:15, one of the office windows cracked. A thin line spread across the glass. No explanation. No impact. Just a crack. At 2:16, every computer monitor turned on simultaneously. Even the ones disconnected from power. The screens displayed static. White noise filled the room. And then the clock changed. And then the clock changed. 2:17. The entire building shuddered. Boom. The sound came from somewhere beneath us, not above, not beside, below. The floor vibrated. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Boom. A second impact. Stronger. Closer. Boom! A third. The lights died. Darkness swallowed the office. Then came the screaming. Dozens of voices. Men. Women. Children. All crying out at once. The sound erupted through the walls, through the floor, through the building itself. A chorus of pure terror. I covered my ears. It didn't help. The screams seemed to come from inside my head. Richard grabbed a flashlight. His hands shook violently. Stay here. What? Don't move. Another impact shook the building.
Boom.
This one felt directly underneath us. Something struck the floor from below. Hard. Powerfully. Powerfully, like a prisoner trying to break through concrete. Richard cursed. The flashlight beam swung across the office and illuminated something impossible. Words appearing on the wall. Letters forming by themselves. Dark grey, like ash. One symbol at a time. I watched in horror as the sentence completed itself. She is waking. The screams stopped instantly. Silence returned. The lights came back. The wall became clean again. No writing. No ash. Nothing. The office looked normal. Yet both of us knew what we'd seen. Neither mentioned it. For several moments, nobody moved. Then Richard whispered, "Oh God." I looked at him. What does it mean? His face had lost all color. What? She is waking. He stared toward the floor. Toward whatever lay beneath us. Then he answered. And those words would haunt me for the rest of my life. Margaret wasn't asking for help. A knot formed in my stomach. "What do you mean?" Richard swallowed. Slowly, painfully, then said, "I think she was trying to warn us." A loud metallic crash echoed somewhere deep within the crematorium. Not a furnace, not a door. Something larger, heavier, older. The sound rolled through the building like thunder. Then came another noise. A long scraping groan. Metal dragging across concrete. A long scraping groan. My pulse exploded. Richard's eyes widened. No. Another scrape. Longer. Closer. Why should we stop now? Then silence. Absolute silence. The kind that exists just before disaster. Richard stood immediately. "We need to leave. Right now? Right now." What happened? He looked toward the hallway, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine panic. Not fear. Panic. Pure survival instinct. Then he said, "That door hasn't moved in 30 years. We left the office immediately. Or, at least, we tried to." The moment Richard opened the door, we both stopped. The hallway beyond had changed. Not dramatically. Not enough for someone unfamiliar with the building to notice. But I knew every corridor in that crematorium. Every crack in the walls. Every dent in the concrete. And something was wrong. The hallway was longer. Much longer. The exit should have been visible from the office, said. Darkness stretched endlessly ahead. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed weakly, casting pale pools of light across a corridor that seemed to continue forever. Richard slowly closed the door. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We had both seen it. We had both seen it. The building itself was changing. Or perhaps something inside it was. "Stay close," Richard whispered. His flashlight beam trembled slightly. I noticed he kept glancing toward Furnace 3, like a man expecting a predator to emerge from the shadows. We moved cautiously down the hallway. Every sound felt amplified. Every footstep echoed unnaturally far. The silence between those echoes seemed alive, watching us, listening, waiting. When we reached the furnace room, I immediately noticed something strange. The floor. One of the concrete slabs near Furnace 3 was missing. A black opening yawned beneath it. A rectangle of darkness. A staircase descending underground. Cold air drifted upward. The smell hit me instantly. Rot. Mold. Wet stone. And something else. Something older. A smell that reminded me of old graves after rain. Richard stared at the opening. His face looked pale, almost sick. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. You knew this was here?" His eyes never left the staircase. I hoped it wasn't. That wasn't an answer. And somehow it terrified me more. The staircase descended into complete darkness. The flashlight couldn't illuminate the bottom. the beam simply vanished, swallowed, as though the darkness itself absorbed light. I stood at the edge, looking down. Something about the opening felt wrong. Not physically, instinctively, like standing near the edge of a cliff, or beside deep water. Like standing near the edge of a cliff, a primal warning buried somewhere in human DNA. Do not go down there. Richard seemed to feel it too, yet, after a long silence, he sighed. Then started descending. Wait, he stopped. Looked back. I noticed genuine regret in his eyes. The expression of a man who wished he could protect someone from the truth, but couldn't. If we don't go now, he said quietly, we may never get another chance. The staircase seemed endless. Concrete steps disappeared into darkness, each one wet, each one cold. The temperature dropped steadily. After 30 seconds, my breath became visible. After a minute, I was shivering. After 2 minutes, I realized something impossible. After 2 minutes, we should have reached the bottom by now. The building wasn't that large. The basement couldn't possibly be this deep. The basement couldn't even possibly be this deep, yet the staircase continued. Down, down, down. So the air grew colder, heavier, older. The smell intensified. Beneath the odor of decay lurked something metallic. The smell of blood. Fresh blood. Finally, after what felt like 5 minutes of descending, the staircase ended, and we entered the underground level. The basement looked nothing like I expected. No storage rooms, no maintenance areas, no utility systems. Instead, it resembled an abandoned hospital. Long corridors stretched into darkness. Long corridors, doors lined both sides. Most hung open. Some had fallen from their hinges entirely. The walls were covered in strange markings. Thousands of them. Scratched into concrete. Painted in black. Written in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. The symbols twisted and curved in impossible patterns. Merely looking at them made my eyes hurt. Richard avoided looking directly at them. I quickly understood why. The longer I stared, the more they seemed to move. Not physically, but subtly, as if they shifted whenever I wasn't paying attention. Who made these? My voice sounded unnaturally loud. Richard didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "The workers." I stared at him. What workers? The ones who built the basement. The flashlight illuminated a nearby wall. Someone had carved hundreds of names into the concrete. Thousands, perhaps. Layer upon layer. Some fresh, some ancient. One name caught my attention. Margaret Holloway. Another. Harold Finch. Another. Dozens from the missing records upstairs. My stomach tightened. My stomach tightened. These weren't random names. They were the disappeared. All of them. Every single one. And beneath each name was the same message. She sees. The corridor ended at a large steel door. My pulse immediately accelerated. I recognized it. The photograph. The same door. The same scratches. The same dried blood. The same warning. Do not open. The letters remained visible despite decades of age. Someone had painted them repeatedly, again and again, as though terrified the warning might fade. The door itself looked ancient. Massive locking mechanisms lined the frame. Heavy chains wrapped around it. At least a dozen padlocks. Enough to secure a prison, or contain something inside one. Richard stood motionless, staring. His breathing had become shallow, uneven. Fear radiated from him, some pure and unmistakable. Richard? No response. His eyes remained fixed on the door. Then he whispered, "It's open." At first I didn't understand. Then I saw it. The chains. Broken. Not cut. Broken. The steel links appeared twisted apart, as if enormous force had ripped through them. The padlocks lay scattered across the floor, crushed, flattened. I felt cold spread through my body. The door itself stood slightly ajar, only an inch. Only an inch, but enough. Enough for darkness to leak through the gap. Enough for cold air to emerge. Enough for something to escape. Enough. The realization hit me immediately. Whatever had been sealed down here was no longer sealed. A sound echoed from somewhere beyond the door. A soft tapping, slow, rhythmic. Tap, 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 like fingernails against metal. Neither of us moved. The tapping continued. Tap, 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 then stopped. Silence returned, and from the darkness beyond the door came a voice. A woman's voice. Soft. Gentle. Familiar. Emily. Every muscle in my body locked. I knew that voice. Not Margaret. Not the burned woman.
Someone else. Someone impossible. Someone who should have been thousands of miles away, or perhaps years away. The voice belonged to my mother. My mother had died when I was 16. Car accident, rainstorm, drunk driver, instant death. I identified her body myself. I attended the funeral. I watched the burial. She was dead, absolutely dead. Yet her voice emerged clearly from the darkness beyond the door. Emily. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. A reaction deeper than logic, deeper than reason. The instinctive response of a child hearing their mother's voice. Mom? The word escaped before I could stop it. Richard grabbed my arm immediately. Hard, painfully hard. Don't. His voice sounded terrified, not concerned, terrified. The darkness beyond the door shifted slightly. Something moved. Then my mother's voice spoke again. It's okay, sweetheart. I nearly collapsed. The tone, the warmth, the affection. Perfect. Exactly perfect. Identical to memory. I've missed you. Tears rolled down my face. Every instinct told me to run toward the voice, to open the door, to see her again. Just once, just one more time. Richard tightened his grip. His nails dug into my skin. Emily, I looked at him. His expression froze the blood in my veins. Because he wasn't looking at the door. He was looking over my shoulder, at something behind me. Something standing in the corridor. Slowly, I turned around. The flashlight beam swept across the darkness, across the walls, across the abandoned hallway, then stopped. Someone stood 20 feet away, watching us. A woman, burned, blackened, white eyes glowing in the darkness. Margaret Holloway, except she wasn't smiling anymore. She looked terrified, truly terrified, and she was shaking her head, desperately, violently, warning us, begging us, "Don't listen, don't open it." Then she pointed toward the door and mouthed 3 words. "It isn't her." The steel door suddenly slammed open. The impact echoed like an explosion. Every flashlight died instantly. Darkness swallowed the basement, absolute darkness, and from inside the room beyond came a sound. A laugh. Low, ancient, wrong, not human. Not anything human had ever been. The voice spoke once more, still sounding exactly like my mother. Yet now something else hid beneath it. Something vast, something hungry, something that had worn countless voices before mine. "Emily," the darkness breathed, and for the first time in my life, I understood what true fear felt like. Not fear of death, not fear of pain. Fear of something that should not exist. Something old enough to remember when humanity was still learning fire. Something that had waited beneath this crematorium for decades, maybe centuries, and now...
The darkness moved. Not around us. Toward us. I couldn't see it. Couldn't hear footsteps. Couldn't identify any shape. Yet something was approaching. Every instinct screamed the same warning. Yet, run. Richard reacted first. His hand seized my wrist. Move! We sprinted blindly through the basement. The darkness behind us seemed alive, pressing forward, following. The flashlight remained dead. The emergency lights never activated. We navigated using memory and panic alone. The steel door vanished somewhere behind us. Yet I could still hear that voice. My mother's voice. Soft. Patient. Gentle. Emily. The sound came from every direction. Ahead. Behind. Beside me. Inside my head. Come back. I nearly stumbled. For one horrible second, I wanted to obey. The voice awakened memories, birthdays, Christmas mornings, bedtime stories, moments I hadn't thought about in years. It wasn't merely imitating her. It knew her. Or knew enough about me to recreate her perfectly. That realization terrified me more than anything. Because it meant the thing behind the door could see inside my mind. We reached an intersection and stopped, both of us gasping for breath. The voice faded. Silence returned. For now. Richard leaned against a wall, sweating heavily. Sweating, his face looked 10 years older than it had upstairs. What was that? My question sounded weak. Childlike. Richard stared into the darkness. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, it learns. I hated that answer immediately. What learns? The thing below. The corridor seemed colder. What exactly is it? He laughed bitterly. I've spent 2 decades asking that question. I waited. Eventually, he continued. The first records call it many names. What names? His eyes met mine.
The listener. A chill traveled through my body. The mourning woman. Another pause. Then, the Ash Mother. The name lingered in the darkness. Heavy. Wrong. Wong. Ancient. A distant metallic groan echoed through the tunnels. The sound of old machinery moving somewhere deep underground. Neither of us liked it. Richard checked his watch. 2:34 a.m. Come on. Where? The archive, I frowned. What archive? His answer surprised me. The reason I'm still alive. We moved through the underground corridors. The basement extended far beyond the dimensions of the building above. That fact became impossible to ignore. The crematorium occupied perhaps 20,000 square feet. Yet the tunnels stretched endlessly, branches splitting into more branches, hallways disappearing into darkness. Entire sections collapsed from age. Others looked strangely preserved. Entire sections witnessed the Rythium. The thought unsettled me. Who would maintain a hidden underground labyrinth beneath the crematorium? The answer came quickly. Something. Eventually, we reached a rusted security door. Unlike the massive steel barrier, this one appeared ordinary. A forgotten maintenance entrance. Richard produced a key. My eyebrows rose. Who've been here before? Many times. The lock clicked open. The door groaned inward. And I immediately understood why he called it an archive. The room beyond resembled a library. A gigantic library. Rows upon rows of shelves extended into darkness. Thousands of books. Thousands. Every shelf packed tightly. Every volume identical. Black covers. No titles. No markings. Just endless rows of dark books. The smell struck me immediately. Not paper, not leather, ash. The entire room smelled like cremated remains. Richard entered silently, respectfully, like someone walking through a cemetery. What is this place? His answer came quietly. The dead.
I stared at him. What? Richard approached one shelf, carefully removed a book, and handed it to me. The cover felt strange, soft, warm, almost organic. My stomach tightened. I opened it. Every page was filled with names, dates, photographs, personal details, entire life stories, birth, childhood, marriage, work, illness, death, everything. The book described a human life from beginning to end. I flipped through pages rapidly. The details were impossibly specific, private, intimate, things no record should contain, things nobody could know. Dreams, fears, regrets, secret thoughts, every hidden corner of a person's existence, documented, preserved, recorded. I reached the final page. The name at the top made my breath stop. Margaret Holloway. My pulse accelerated. The final entry had been written only days earlier. Date of death, time of cremation. Everything matched. Yet beneath the final paragraph, someone had added a new line. The handwriting looked fresh, recent, alive. She returned. I closed the book immediately. A feeling of wrongness crawled through me. Who writes these? Richard didn't answer. Instead, he led me deeper into the archive, past thousands of shelves, past thousands of books, until we reached a section separated from the others. A locked area, protected by iron bars. My stomach tightened. Every book inside bore a red symbol on its cover. The same symbol I'd seen scratched across the basement walls. What are these? Richard hesitated. Then, the returned. I didn't want to ask, but I did. What does that mean? His expression darkened. People who came back. The room suddenly felt smaller, colder. Like Margaret? Like Margaret. I looked at the shelves. There were dozens of books, maybe hundreds. Far more than the missing body reports. Far more than the vanished employees. A horrifying realization formed. Richard, he nodded before I finished. Yes. You're telling me all of them? Returned. I stared at the books. The implications were impossible. Hundreds of dead people, walking again, speaking again, watching, waiting, somewhere. Richard unlocked the barred section. The gate opened with a metallic squeal. Then he walked toward the oldest shelf, carefully removed a single book. The cover appeared ancient, cracked, worn. The pages looked brittle. He handed it to me. I opened it. The first page contained no photograph, only a drawing, a charcoal sketch of a woman. Tall, thin, wrapped in black cloth. No visible face, just darkness beneath a hood. The name beneath the drawing read, The Ash Mother. My heart stopped. The following pages contained records unlike anything I'd seen. Not personal histories, historical accounts, witness testimonies, descriptions, warnings, stories spanning centuries. The earliest entry dated back to 1683, then 1711.
The again and again. Different places, different countries, different names, yet always the same figure, the same woman, the same presence, the same pattern. Death, fire, disappearances, mass graves, entire villages abandoned. Every account described a creature that fed on grief, a thing drawn to death, a predator hiding among mourners. Listening, learning, growing stronger. The colon final page contained a sentence written in massive black letters. I read it aloud. The dead do not fear death. My voice trembled. Richard looked away. I finished the sentence. They fear her. The room suddenly shook. Hard. Books fell from shelves. Dust exploded into the air. A distant roar echoed through the tunnels. Not a human sound. Not an animal sound. Something deeper, older. The noise vibrated through concrete itself. Then came another impact. Closer. Closer. The shelves rattled violently. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the archive, something enormous was moving. Richard grabbed the book from my hands. We need to go. Wait, no, we need answers. His expression became grim. We're out of time. The roar echoed again. Much closer now. Much closer now. The books around us trembled. Then something impossible happened. One of them opened by itself. Pages flipped rapidly, hundreds at a time. Then another, and another, and another. Soon, thousands of books were opening simultaneously. Pages turning, paper fluttering like wings. The archive sounded alive. The noise became deafening. A storm of whispers filled the room. Thousands of voices speaking together. Men, women, children, the dead.
Every recorded life speaking at once. The sound nearly drove me to my knees. Then all the voices merged into a single sentence. A warning. Desperate. Urgent. Terrified. Run. The lights above the shelves exploded. Glass rained down. Darkness swallowed half the archive. And from somewhere beyond the stacks came a slow sound. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Approaching. The shelves trembled with each step. Thud. 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 Richard's face lost all color. For the first time, I saw absolute terror. Not fear, not panic. Terror. The kind people feel when they finally meet something they thought existed only in nightmares. He whispered, "It's here." The footsteps stopped. The archive became silent. No whispers. No pages turning. Nothing. Then a figure appeared between the shelves, far away, barely visible. A woman. Tall. Unnaturally tall. At least 7 feet. Perhaps more. Wrapped entirely in black. Her face hidden beneath darkness. Yet I felt her looking directly at me, studying me, knowing me. The temperature dropped instantly. Ice formed along nearby shelves. My breath crystallized. The figure tilted her head, like a curious animal. Then she spoke. Not with my mother's voice, not with Margaret's voice, with hundreds of voices. Thousands, all speaking simultaneously. And every voice said the same thing. Emily. The book Richard held burst into flames. Without warning, without heat. Black fire consumed the pages. The flames climbed upward, spreading unnaturally. The woman did not move. She simply watched. The fire illuminated something beneath her hood. Not a face, a void. An endless darkness where a face should have been. Inside that darkness, I saw movement. Hundreds of faces, thousands, screaming, trying to escape, trapped forever. The Ash Mother took a single step forward, and every survival instinct in my body shattered, because I finally understood the truth. The dead weren't returning to haunt the crematorium. They were trying to warn us, trying to stop us, trying to keep her sealed below. Because whatever stood before us wasn't a ghost, wasn't a demon, wasn't even human. It was something far older, and somehow it was waking up.
For a moment, neither of us moved. The Ash Mother stood between the shelves, motionless, silent, watching. The black fire from the burning book reflected across the endless rows of volumes, casting impossible shadows that crawled along the walls. I couldn't breathe properly. My chest felt tight. My pulse hammered in my ears. Every instinct told me the same thing. If she reached us, something worse than death would happen. Then Richard grabbed my arm. Hard. Run. The spell broke instantly. We turned and sprinted. The archive exploded into chaos behind us. Books crashed from shelves. Metal groaned. The black flames spread unnaturally fast, consuming pages without producing smoke. As we raced through the darkness, I heard the whispering again. Thousands of voices. Not from the books. From behind us. From her. The voices of the dead. Every soul she carried. every soul trapped inside that darkness beneath her hood.
The sound followed us through the tunnels, growing louder, growing closer, hungrier. The basement seemed different now. The corridors no longer felt abandoned. The roof tail no longer sat just watching, and more. No, it was guesstant, but not by a twist from dial. By the rushing necessity, something is an always known choreology. At one intersection, I caught sight of someone standing motionless in a doorway. Another figure appeared moments later, and a little girl. Burned skin, white eyes, watching silently. Then she vanished too. The returned. There were more of them than Richard had ever admitted. Far more. We finally stopped inside a maintenance room. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind us. Richard immediately dragged a rusted cabinet across it. Then another. Then another. His breathing was ragged. Desperate. Like a man trying to hold back a flood with sandbags. Will that stop her? No. The answer came instantly. Then why do it? His eyes met mine. Because it might slow everything else. I wasn't sure which answer frightened me more. The room itself looked ancient. Pipes lined the walls. Old electrical panels covered in dust. Blueprints yellowed with age. Most had fallen apart. One remained pinned to the far wall. Richard walked directly toward it, as though he'd been searching for it. I followed, then froze. The blueprint showed the crematorium. But not the crematorium I knew. A different version. A larger version. A hidden version. The official building appeared at the top. The basement beneath it. And below that, another level. What is this? Richard stared at the blueprint. His expression had become distant, almost haunted. The truth. My stomach tightened. The lowest section contained a circular chamber, massive, far larger than anything above. At its center sat something labeled Furnace Ive. I frowned. There are only 3 furnaces, Richard nodded slowly. Officially. Officially, a terrible realization crept through me. The 4th furnace is underground. Yes. What was it for? Richard remained silent. His eyes lingered on the blueprint. Then he pointed toward a date printed in one corner. The original construction year. This place wasn't built as a crematorium. I stared at him. What? It became a crematorium later. The room suddenly felt colder. What was it before? His answer came quietly. A prison. The words echoed in my mind. Prison. Not hospital. Not storage facility. Prison. Prison. A place built to contain something. Or someone. I looked at the blueprint again. The lower levels suddenly made far more sense. Exactly. The reinforced walls. The hidden tunnels. The steel barriers. The warnings. All of it. The entire structure had been designed around containment. The crematorium above wasn't the building's purpose. It was camouflage. A disguise. A mask. Who built it? Richard exhaled slowly. Nobody knows. That's impossible. It gets worse. I wasn't sure I wanted worse. Yet he continued anyway. The town didn't exist when it was built. A knot formed in my stomach. What? The prison predates everything. I stared. The town. Yes. The cemetery. Yes. The roads. Yes. Richard's face had become pale. The prison was here first. A heavy impact shook the room. The cabinets against the door rattled violently. We both jumped. Something had struck the other side. Hard, very hard. Silence followed. Then another impact, closer, stronger. Metal groaned. The door bent inward slightly. My pulse exploded. She's here. Richard shook his head. No. The third impact arrived. The steel door buckled. A long crack appeared near the frame. Richard's expression darkened. Not her, I swallowed. What then? The answer came immediately. The returned. The dead had found us. A scratching noise spread across the metal. Hundreds of fingernails. Dragging slowly. Methodically. Searching. Testing. The sound made my skin crawl. Richard grabbed a flashlight from a shelf, then pointed toward another door hidden behind old machinery. A narrow passage, almost invisible. This way. We entered immediately. The maintenance room disappeared behind us. Seconds later, something slammed into the main door with enough force to tear metal. The sound echoed through the tunnels. The dead were no longer wandering. They were hunting.
The hidden passage descended deeper, far deeper. The air became warmer, drier. Ash drifted through the darkness like gray snow. The walls changed from concrete to black stone, ancient stone, covered in the same symbols we'd seen elsewhere. Yet these symbols appeared older, much older, as though everything above had merely copied them. At one point, I touched the wall. Instantly, a memory flashed through my mind. Fire, screaming, thousands of people kneeling around a pit. A woman standing in the flames, watching, smiling. I yanked my hand away. The vision vanished. My heart raced. The stone felt warm, almost alive. Eventually, the passage opened into an enormous cavern. I stopped dead. The blueprint hadn't prepared me for this. Nothing could have. The chamber stretched hundreds of feet across. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness. Ancient pillars rose from the floor, each one covered in carvings. The space resembled a forgotten cathedral buried beneath the earth. At the center stood a machine, a massive furnace, bigger than a house, Furnace 4. The structure looked nothing like the modern cremation units upstairs. This thing was ancient, built from black iron. Chains wrapped around it. Thousands of symbols covered every surface. The furnace door alone stood 20 feet tall, and someone had welded it shut. And again, layer upon layer of steel, as if generations of people had desperately tried to ensure it never opened. The sight filled me with dread, because there was only one reason to seal a furnace so thoroughly. Something was inside. Richard approached slowly, his expression unreadable, almost mournful. I found this place 15 years ago. I looked at him. You never told anyone? No. Why? His answer came quietly. Because I didn't think anyone would believe me. That was fair. I barely believed it myself. Then I noticed something strange. The floor around the furnace. Names, thousands of names, carved into stone, everywhere, layer upon layer, decades, centuries, perhaps longer. I knelt beside one. The letters looked familiar. Margaret Holloway. Nearby, Harold Finch. Another. All the missing. Every disappeared worker. Every vanished body. Thousands. My stomach turned. They came down here. Richard nodded. Most of them. Why? His eyes moved toward Furnace 4, and for a moment, genuine sorrow crossed his face. To stop her. The words barely left his mouth before the cavern shook. Hard. The entire chamber trembled. Dust cascaded from above. Ancient stone cracked. A deep rumbling echoed beneath the floor. Then came a sound from inside the furnace. My blood froze. One knock from within. Boom! The iron structure trembled. Another knock followed. Louder, more deliberate. Boom! Richard's face went white. Completely white. He looked genuinely horrified. I had never seen anyone so afraid. Not even in movies. Not even during disasters. This was something deeper. Older. Primal. Richard? He didn't answer. His eyes remained locked on the furnace. Then the third knock arrived. Boom! The entire tavern shook. Cracks raced across the stone floor. One of the chains snapped. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I stared. Unable to breathe. Unable to think. Unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Because something impossible had become suddenly obvious. The Ash Mother wasn't trapped behind the steel door upstairs. She had never been trapped there. That door had been a barrier, a checkpoint, a warning, not a prison. The real prison was here, and whatever lived inside Furnace 4 was trying to get out. Then came a voice, not from the darkness, not from the tunnels, from inside the furnace itself. A woman's voice, soft, gentle, familiar. The same voice that had called my name. The same voice that had pretended to be my mother, only now it sounded amused, patient, certain. And it said, "Emily." A second chain snapped. The giant furnace door bulged outward. Something on the other side pushed against it. Slowly, powerfully. Ancient metal screamed in protest. I backed away instinctively. Richard did the opposite. He stepped forward, toward it. "Richard, what are you doing?" For several seconds he didn't answer. Then he looked at me, and the expression in his eyes made my stomach drop. Because he looked like a man who had made a decision long ago. A decision he always knew would come due. Sooner or later. Then he said, "There's one thing I never told you." The furnace groaned again. More chains snapped. The cavern shook. Yet Richard remained calm, almost peaceful. And when he spoke again, his voice barely rose above a whisper. "I wasn't hired here." The words hung in the air. Wrong. Impossible. What? Richard looked toward Furnace 4, then back at me. The sadness in his eyes seemed endless. "I was born here."
I was born here. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him.
The cavern rumbled again. Chains snapped somewhere above us. The giant furnace groaned under pressure from within. Yet those 4 words somehow frightened me more. Born here. Not hired. Not assigned. Born. Richard stood beside Furnace the 4th. The orange glow leaking through cracks in the ancient iron illuminated his face. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked honest. Not calm, not mysterious. Just tired. A man carrying a burden for far too long. You were born. In the crematorium? He shook his head. No. Another tremor rolled through the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. The crematorium came later. I stared.
Then realization hit. The prison. Richard nodded. The prison. The furnace emitted another deep, metallic groan. The sound echoed across the cavern. I noticed something disturbing. The symbols covering its surface were changing, fading, as though whatever power had carved them there was slowly failing. One by one, line by line, line by line, a seal unraveling. My family guarded this place, Richard's voice echoed softly. For generations, I remained silent. He continued. My father was born here, another tremor. My grandfather, another. My great-grandfather. The chain nearest us snapped violently. Its broken end lashed across the floor like a whip. Sparks erupted. The furnace door bulged outward another inch. Something inside was pushing harder now, growing impatient. What exactly is she? The question escaped before I could stop it. Richard closed his eyes. For several seconds he said nothing. Then, I don't know, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was terrifying. After generations, after centuries, after all of this, they still didn't know. But there are stories. His eyes opened again. Dark. Haunted. The oldest records describe her as a woman. He glanced toward the furnace. Later records disagree. What do they say? His answer came quietly. They say she only looks like a woman. The cavern seemed colder despite the furnace heat. A distant scream echoed through the tunnels. A distant scream echoed through the tunnels. Then another, then dozens. They returned. They were moving through the underground complex, searching, hunting. The dead had become restless. Richard ignored the sounds. They found references dating back thousands of years. My pulse quickened. Thousands? He nodded. The descriptions were always similar. A pause. Something arrives. The furnace groaned. People die. The walls trembled. Then grief follows. I swallowed. What does grief have to do with it? Richard looked at me. Everything changed in his expression. Not fear, understanding. The look of someone finally describing a nightmare they've spent years trying to forget. Because grief opens doors. The words settled heavily between us. Wrong. Deeply wrong. Yet something inside me understood. The thing beneath the crematorium wasn't feeding on bodies. It wasn't feeding on death. It was feeding on what came after. The pain. The loss. The emptiness left behind. Every funeral, Richard's voice became distant. Every goodbye. The furnace creaked. Every person who begs for one more chance. A chain snapped overhead. Every child who wishes their mother could come back. My blood turned to ice. Because his eyes had shifted toward me. The memory hit instantly. My mother's funeral. 16 years old. Standing beside the grave. Praying. Begging. Crying. Please come back. Just once. Please. The cavern suddenly felt suffocating. What are you saying? Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward a stone pillar. Ancient carvings covered its surface. He brushed dust aside. A symbol emerged, the same symbol from the returned books. The same symbol from the returned books, only larger and only barrage, older. The original. People think grief is passive. He traced the symbol carefully. It isn't. The furnace groaned louder. It's one of the strongest forces humans produce. A pause. Strong enough to attract things. Something shifted inside the furnace. A massive impact shook the cavern. The iron door bent outward. Another chain snapped. Only a few remained. Richard, my voice sounded weak. What? Why me? The question had haunted me for hours. Days, maybe longer. Why had the voices called my name? Why had the Ash Mother chosen me? Why now? Why Richard looked away. And immediately I knew. He already knew the answer. No, the word escaped before he spoke. No, his silence confirmed everything. Tell me. Another impact shook the cavern. The furnace screamed, ancient metal tearing under impossible pressure. Still he hesitated. Tell me, then finally, your application. I frowned. What about it? His face tightened. When you applied, a pause. You weren't the first choice. I stared. The answer made no sense. What? There were others. The cavern trembled again. They all declined. Another tremor. Some never responded. Another. One disappeared. A terrible feeling settled into my stomach. Cold, heavy, predictable, like a puzzle piece finally finding its place. Then why me? Richard looked directly into my eyes and whispered, because she wanted you. The furnace door bulged violently outward. A crack split across its center. Orange light poured through. Something moved behind it. Something enormous. I barely noticed. My mind remained trapped on Richard's words. Because she wanted you. When? The question felt difficult to ask. Richard answered anyway. Years ago. The world stopped. What? His expression became grim. The first time she reached for you. A pause. Was the night your mother died. The cavern vanished, not physically. Mentally. Everything faded. The furnace, the chains, the screams, the darkness, the friends. Only one memory remained. Rain, headlights, a ringing telephone. A police officer standing at our front door. No, Richard nodded slowly. The dead don't always return. My chest tightened. But sometimes the furnace roared. Something else answers first. A deafening impact exploded across the cavern. The furnace door split. One of its hinges shattered. Molten sparks rained across the floor. The remaining chains strained violently. Seconds from failure. You're lying. The words sounded desperate, childish. I knew it. Richard knew it. Yet, I said them anyway. I wish I was. The screams in the tunnels suddenly stopped. Every single one. Instantly. The silence felt unnatural, predatory. Then figures began appearing around the edge of the cavern. The returned. Dozens of them, standing motionless among the pillars, watching. Burned faces, white eyes, silent expressions. Men, women, children, all staring toward Furnace 4, not worshipping, not obeying, fearing. Margaret stood among them. I recognized her immediately. She looked exactly as before. Burned skin, white eyes, terror, pure terror. Then something extraordinary happened. She stepped forward. The other returned followed, one by one. Dozens, hundreds emerging from darkness, not toward us, toward the furnace. Nice stared, unable to understand. What are they doing? Richard's answer came immediately. The same thing they've always done. The returned formed a circle around Furnace 4, silent, motionless, united. The dead had come to hold the prison closed. A chain snapped. Another. Only one remained. Margaret looked directly at me. For the first time, her expression softened. Almost human. Almost peaceful. Then she mouthed 4 words. You must not listen. The final chain broke. The furnace door exploded outward. The blast wave knocked me off my feet. Ancient iron crashed across the cavern. Dust erupted everywhere. The ground shook violently. Several pillars collapsed. The returned staggered but did not retreat. They held their positions, waiting, watching. Orange light flooded the chamber. Blinding. Impossible. The interior of Furnace 4 looked far larger than physics allowed. Not a furnace. Not a chamber. A void. An endless burning darkness stretching beyond sight. Something moved inside. Slowly. Deliberately. A silhouette. A woman-shaped silhouette. Far too tall. Far too thin. And then thousands of voices spoke simultaneously. The sound rolled across the cavern like thunder. Emily. The returned screamed. Every one of them. Not in rage. Not in attack. In warning. Because something was finally coming out. And as the figure stepped through the ruined furnace door, I realized a horrifying truth. The Ash Mother had never been trapped inside. The furnace had been keeping the rest of her out.
The figure stepped out of Furnace 4, and the world changed. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically. The moment her foot touched the stone floor, every light in the cavern died. Every sound vanished. Every movement stopped. It felt as if reality itself had taken a breath and forgotten how to exhale. For one impossible second, everything stood perfectly still. The dust hanging in the air, the sparks from broken chains, even the pain in my racing heartbeat. Everything froze. Then time returned, violently. The cavern exploded with noise. Stone cracked. Pillars shattered. The floor buckled beneath our feet. The return screamed. Hundreds of voices crying out at once. Not in rage, not in hatred, in terror. Pure terror. The dead were afraid. And if the dead were afraid, what chance did the living have? The Ash Mother stood motionless, at least 7 feet tall. Her body appeared wrapped in layers of black cloth that moved as though submerged underwater. No wind touched them, yet they flowed constantly, twisting, breathing, alive. Her face remained hidden beneath the hood, but I could still see movement inside. Faces, hundreds of faces, pressing against the darkness beneath the fabric, trying to escape. Mouths opening in silent screams, hands reaching from impossible depths, then disappearing again. I couldn't look away. Something about her demanded attention. Like gravity, like fire, like a cliff edge. A force woven directly into human instinct. Look at me, see me, know me. Richard grabbed my shoulder. The contact broke the spell instantly. Don't stare. His voice sounded strained, painful, as though speaking itself hurt. Why? He looked genuinely horrified. Because she'll learn you. The sentence made no sense, and yet every part of me believed him. The Ash Mother slowly turned her head, not toward Richard, toward me. The movement was unnaturally smooth, like a puppet being rotated by invisible strings. Thousands of whispers emerged from beneath her hood, layered together, different ages, different languages, different centuries, all speaking simultaneously. Emily, my knees nearly gave out, not because of fear, because of recognition. Some of those voices belonged to people I knew. My mother, I heard her clearly, among thousands of others. One voice in an ocean of voices, calling my name. Tears immediately filled my eyes. The reaction was instinctive, automatic, dangerous. Mom? Richard's hand tightened painfully. No. The Ash Mother tilted her head, curious, interested, like an animal studying prey. Then she smiled, not with a mouth, with the faces beneath the hood. Hundreds of mouths smiling simultaneously, hundreds of eyes opening inside the darkness, watching me, knowing me. The sight nearly broke something inside my mind. And then the dead attacked. The return surged forward together, every one of them. Margaret, Harold, the little girl from the hallway, the pale man in the funeral suit. Hundreds of burned figures rushing the Ash Mother. Not as monsters, as soldiers. A final desperate army. The impact should have overwhelmed her. Hundreds against one. Instead, nothing happened. The Ash Mother simply walked forward, slowly, calmly. The return slammed into her and vanished. Not thrown aside, not destroyed, absorbed. One moment they existed. The next they dissolved into black smoke and disappeared beneath her cloak. Consumed, added, collected. Their screams echoed from inside her, joining the thousands already trapped there. Margaret reached her last. For a moment, she hesitated, white eyes meeting mine. Fear, sadness, acceptance. Then she mouthed one final sentence. Don't believe her. The Ash Mother touched her, and Margaret Holloway ceased to exist. The dead were losing. Richard knew it too. I saw it in his face. A terrible certainty. The certainty of someone watching history repeat itself. There's no stopping her. The words escaped before I realized I'd spoken. Richard looked toward Furnace 4, the ruined prison, the shattered chains, the darkness beyond. Then back at me. Not like this. Another pillar collapsed. The cavern shook violently. Huge sections of ceiling began falling. The underground prison was dying. The Ash Mother continued advancing, never rushing, never running, certain, patient. She had all the time in the world, because she already knew she would win. Then Richard reached inside his coat and removed something. A key. Not an ordinary key. An ancient one. Black iron. Covered in symbols. The same symbols covering the prison walls. My stomach dropped. What is that? Richard stared at it, a strange sadness crossing his face. The reason my family stayed. The cavern trembled again. The Ash Mother absorbed another wave of returned. Their numbers were shrinking rapidly now. Dozens remained, maybe fewer. What does it do? His eyes met mine, and I immediately understood something terrible. The answer was going to cost him. A prison only works if someone stays inside. My blood froze. No, he nodded. No, another nod. The key suddenly felt enormous, heavy, ancient, a burden passed through generations. Father to son, keeper to keeper, guardian to guardian. You can't. Richard smiled sadly. I always could. The Ash Mother stopped walking. For the first time, she had noticed the key. And for the first time, she seemed afraid. The realization struck me like lightning. Not fear of Richard. Not fear of me. Fear of what the key represented. Hope. A way to seal the prison again. A way to stop her. Thousands of voices erupted from beneath her hood. Not whispers, screams, furious, desperate, panicked. The cavern darkened. The temperature plunged. The Ash Mother began moving faster, toward us. For the first time, she was hurrying. Richard turned toward me. Listen carefully. The cavern shook violently. Cracks raced across the floor. The prison was collapsing. You were chosen for a reason. What reason? Richard swallowed. Because she can't fully enter the world alone. The Ash Mother accelerated. The darkness around her spreading, growing, consuming. What does that mean? Richard's voice became almost impossible to hear beneath the chaos. She needs permission. The answer stunned me. What? A door. Another crack split the floor. Someone grieving. The dead continued throwing themselves at her, buying seconds. Only seconds. Someone willing to let her in. The realization hit instantly. My mother, the voice, the years, the dreams, the whispers. She had never wanted my body. She wanted my invitation, my acceptance, my grief. Every time I wished my mother could return, something had been listening. The Ash Mother extended a hand toward me, and my mother's voice emerged from the darkness. Perfect, warm, loving. Exactly as I remembered. It's okay, sweetheart. My heart shattered. For one horrible second, I wanted to believe. I wanted it more than anything. Then I remembered Margaret, the warnings, the returned, the dead fighting to stop her. And I understood. The thing speaking wasn't my mother. It was the reason she never came back. The Ash Mother smiled, because she realized I understood. That made her even more dangerous. Richard pressed the key into my hand. The metal felt warm, alive. What do I do? He looked toward the collapsing furnace, toward the darkness beyond, toward the prison. Then he answered, "Finish what my family started." A deafening roar shook the cavern. The ceiling began collapsing. The last of the returned were disappearing. And somewhere deep inside Furnace 4, something else moved. Something far larger than the figure standing before us. Something that had not yet emerged. Something waiting behind her.
The floor split open. A crack raced across the cavern from wall to wall, tearing through stone that had remained untouched for centuries. The sound was deafening. Ancient. Final. This wasn't damage. It was collapse. The prison wasn't failing anymore. It was dying. The Ash Mother stopped. Not because of fear. Because she was listening. Something below us had called, and she had heard it. A low vibration rolled through the earth. At first, I thought it was another tremor. Then I realized it wasn't coming through the floor. It was coming through me. My bones, my teeth, my heartbeat, a sound too deep for human ears, yet somehow understandable, like hearing a language older than words. The Ash Mother slowly turned toward Furnace 4 and bowed. Every instinct inside me screamed, run, hide, look away, do anything except witness what was happening. Because something was about to emerge, and humanity had never been meant to see it. Richard knew it too. I saw it in his eyes. And not panic, resignation. The terrible calm of someone whose worst nightmare had finally arrived. The stories were wrong. His voice barely rose above a whisper. What stories? The ones about her. The Ash Mother remained kneeling, still, waiting. Richard looked toward the ruined furnace, toward the darkness inside. They thought she was the prisoner. A huge piece of ceiling collapsed. Stone shattered across the cavern floor. Neither of us moved. Neither of us cared. Because something was coming. And suddenly I understood something horrifying. The Ash Mother wasn't trying to escape. She had been trying to open the way. She wasn't the thing trapped inside. She was the key. The realization struck me so hard I nearly staggered. No. Richard closed his eyes. Yes. The vibration intensified. The air itself seemed to bend. The reality stretched, warped, as though the world was struggling to contain something larger than itself. Then the darkness inside Furnace 4 moved, not forward, not outward, upward. A shadow rose from within and kept rising. 10 feet, 20, 30, 50, still rising. It had no shape, not exactly, no fixed form, no clear outline. Every time I tried to focus on it, my eyes slid away, like trying to remember a forgotten dream, or stare directly into the sun. Something in the human mind refused to process it. The shadow filled the cavern, then the ceiling, then the darkness above, still growing, still unfolding. And suddenly I understood why the prison existed. Not to contain a creature, to contain a presence, a piece of something far larger. Something that didn't belong here. The Ash Mother stood and stepped aside, like a servant making way for royalty. Thousands of voices erupted from her hood, not screaming, praying. The sound nearly drove me to my knees. Then the shadow looked at me. I don't know how. It had no eyes, no face, no features, yet I felt its attention.
And the moment it noticed me, I remembered things that never happened. I saw cities burning beneath black skies. I saw oceans boiling. I saw mountains split apart like rotten wood. I saw millions of people standing motionless while something watched from above. Not memories, not visions, possibilities, outcomes, the future, everyone ending the same way, darkness. I screamed. The images vanished instantly, but the terror remained.
The shadow wasn't evil. That was the worst part. It wasn't angry or cruel or hateful. It simply didn't care, the way a hurricane doesn't care, the way a star doesn't care, the way gravity doesn't care. Humanity meant nothing to it, and that realization was more horrifying than hatred. The Ash Mother began walking toward me, slowly, gracefully, her movements almost human. Almost. Every returned soul had been absorbed, every warning silenced, every guardian defeated. Only Richard and I remained, the last witnesses, the last obstacle. The key in my hand suddenly grew hot, painfully hot. Symbols glowed across its surface, ancient markings awakening. Richard saw it immediately. Good. I stared at him. Good? He nodded. The prison recognizes you. The answer terrified me.
Sigh, I don't want it to. Another sad smile. I know. The shadow shifted above us. The cavern darkened further. Stone dissolved into ash. Pillars collapsed one by one. Pillars the prison was running out of time. So were we. The Ash Mother stopped only 20 feet away. Then she spoke. Not with thousands of voices, with one. My mother's. Emily. The word nearly shattered my resolve. Because it sounded perfect. Not close, not convincing. Perfect. Exactly as I remembered. Exactly as I loved. Exactly as I missed. The years vanished. The grief returned. Raw, fresh, open. I was 16 again, standing beside a grave, begging for one more chance. And she knew it. The Ash Mother knew every wound, every regret, every lonely night, every unanswered prayer. Come home. Tears streamed down my face. The temptation was unbearable, not because I believed her, because I wanted to. That was the trap. Not deception, desire. She offered what grief always wants. One more conversation, one more hug, one more goodbye, one impossible moment, and suddenly I understood why she always won. Not because she was powerful, because people opened the door themselves. The shadow above us expanded. Reality groaned. The prison continued dying. The Ash Mother extended her hand. Please. One word, spoken in my mother's voice. And for the first time, I saw genuine desperation. Not for me, for permission. She needed me to choose, needed me to surrender, needed me to invite her across the final threshold, because despite everything, she still couldn't enter completely, not without help. The key burned hotter. Richard stepped beside me. The Ash Mother's expression changed instantly. Hatred. Pure hatred. The first true emotion I'd seen from her. And suddenly Richard looked very tired. Very old. Like a man reaching the end of a long road. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. She's afraid. The Ash Mother screamed. The sound shattered stone. The cavern erupted. The shadow above twisted violently.
The prison began collapsing in earnest.
And beneath the screaming, beneath the chaos, beneath the destruction, I finally heard something else. A voice. Not my mother's, not the Ash mother's, not one of the dead. Something deeper, far older, speaking from within the shadow itself. And when it spoke, every light in the cavern died, because the thing wearing human faces was speaking to its master.
The voice from the shadow did not sound human. It did not sound inhuman either. Human language assumes a speaker, a mouth, a throat, breath. This voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the stone, from the darkness, from the spaces between thoughts. It bypassed the ears entirely. I felt it inside my mind, inside my bones, inside memories that weren't supposed to exist. The moment it spoke, reality faltered. The cavern blurred. For a second, I saw multiple versions of the room layered atop one another. Different ages, different centuries, different disasters. A medieval stone prison, a burned ruin, a cathedral, a mass grave, the crematorium, all existing simultaneously, as if the place had worn many masks over time, but had always served the same purpose: containment. The shadow continued unfolding above us, not growing, like a hand slowly emerging from deep water. Only now I understood the horrifying truth. This wasn't the creature. This was only the part of it that fit inside our reality. A fragment, a finger reaching through a crack. And if this fragment alone required centuries of imprisonment, what waited beyond the crack? I didn't want to know. The Ash Mother knelt before the shadow. For the first time, she seemed small, insignificant. A messenger, a doorway. The realization struck me with terrible clarity. Every story had been wrong, every warning incomplete, every nightmare merely a symptom. Humanity had spent centuries fearing the lock, not what it kept shut. The key in my hand burned brighter. Symbols glowed like molten metal, ancient marks spiraling across the iron. Alive, awake, waiting. Richard stared at it, then at me. His eyes softened, and suddenly I knew this was goodbye. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. Richard smiled, a genuine smile this time, the first I'd ever seen. I know. The cavern shook violently. A huge section of ceiling collapsed. Stone exploded across the floor. The prison had minutes left, perhaps less. Richard, he interrupted gently. My family always knew this day would come. The shadow above us pulsed. The air bent. Reality groaned. There was never a permanent prison. Another collapse. Only delays. The Ash Mother rose, turning toward us once more. My mother's face briefly appeared beneath the hood. Perfect, beautiful, heartbreaking. Then it dissolved, replaced by countless others, all watching, waiting. The shadow wanted entry. The Ash Mother wanted permission. And somehow, I held the final choice. I hated it. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it, but it was mine. The voice of my mother emerged again, soft, warm, gentle. Emily. Tears filled my eyes instantly, not because I believed, because grief never truly leaves. It waits, quietly, patiently, and when given the chance, it speaks. The Ash Mother extended her hand. You don't have to be alone anymore. The sentence struck like a knife. Because loneliness had always been the wound beneath everything else. Not death, not loss. Loneliness. The empty chair, the unanswered phone, the silence after tragedy. She understood. That was her gift. Not lies, understanding. She knew exactly what people wanted, exactly what they missed, exactly what hurt. And she offered relief. For a terrible moment, I almost accepted. The temptation wasn't supernatural, it was human. That's what made it dangerous. The shadow above us expanded. The cavern darkened further. The prison finally reached its limit. A deafening crack split the floor, and Furnace 4 began to collapse. The ancient structure crumbled inward, its walls buckling, its foundations failing. Richard looked toward it, then back at me, and finally revealed the last secret. The key doesn't lock the prison. I stared. What? His expression became grim. It never did. The cavern shook. The Ash Mothers stopped moving, listening. The key burned hotter. What does it do? Richard took a slow breath, then answered. It starts the fire. The world seemed to stop. I looked at the key, at the symbols, at the furnace, at the collapsing prison, and understanding arrived. The prison wasn't meant to last forever. When containment failed, everything had to burn. Everything, including whoever remained inside, including the keeper, including us. The realization hit like ice water. No. Richard nodded. Yes. The Ash Mother screamed. She understood too. For the first time in centuries, she sounded afraid. Not of imprisonment, of destruction. The shadow above writhed violently. Reality cracked around its edges. The opening was widening, growing. There wasn't time left. Richard stepped closer. Emily. I looked at him. The noise of collapse surrounded us. Stone, fire, darkness, screaming.
Yet his voice remained calm. Listen to me. My throat tightened. There's still a choice. The Ash Mother advanced. Faster now. Desperate. The shadow surged behind her. What choice? Richard's eyes met mine, and for the first time, he looked afraid. Not for himself, for everyone else. You can open the door. The Ash Mother smiled. Or, the smile vanished. You can light the fire. The key pulsed in my hand. The prison groaned. The key pulsed in my hand, and suddenly everything became simple. The human eclipsed disappeared. Not easy, simple. Grief or reality, the past or the future, a comforting lie or a painful truth, my mother, or her memory. The Ash Mother reached toward me, her hand inches away, and behind her I heard my mother's voice one final time. Not from the Ash Mother, not from the shadow, somewhere else. Far away. Gentle, real. And for the first time, I understood the difference. The voice didn't ask me to follow. It didn't ask me to stay. It didn't ask me to open any door. It simply said, I love you. Then it was gone. The grief remained, but the temptation died. I closed my hand around the key and turned it. The symbols ignited instantly. White fire erupted from the stone floor. The cavern exploded with light. The Ash Mother screamed. A true scream. A terrified scream. The shadow recoiled. For the first time, the thing beyond the crack reacted, not with anger, with surprise. The fire spread through the prison, up the pillars, across the walls, through the ancient symbols. Every mark ever carved into the stone ignited. The entire underground complex became a furnace. The last fire. The Ash Mother lunged, trying to reach me, trying to stop it. Richard stepped between us. The impact threw him backward. His body vanished into the flames. I screamed, but there was no time. The flames was reached Furnace 4, and the world shattered, and the flames wipes Earth. White consumed everything. The shadow, the prison, the cavern, the darkness, all of it disappeared. And then, nothing. Epilogue 3 months later. The crematorium no longer existed. Official reports blamed a gas explosion. Investigators found almost nothing beneath the ruins. No hidden prison. No underground labyrinth. No ancient furnace. Nothing. Most people accepted the explanation. Most people wanted to. I understood why. Some truths are easier left buried. I never found Richard's body. Part of me still searches. Part of me always will. The grief never vanished. It never does. But grief isn't a door anymore. It's a memory. A wound that healed into a scar. And scars are different. Scars remind us where we've been, not where we must return. Sometimes I dream about the cavern, about the returned, about Margaret, about the prison, and occasionally I dream about Richard, standing beside Furnace 4, smiling, watching the fire. But the strangest dreams happen on rainy nights, the nights that remind me of my mother. In those dreams, I'm standing beside a grave, 16 years old again, heartbroken, lost, and someone places a hand on my shoulder. When I turn around, it's her, not as a ghost, not as a vision, not asking me to follow, just smiling, proud, at peace. Then she says the same words every time, the words that saved the world. Goodbye, sweetheart. And this time, I let her go.